1-3, order of operations. Now, I have a problem written up. It says consider 3 plus 7 times 8. I've had students that are concerned, which do they do first? Do they add first, do they multiply first? Of course, if you add first, 3 plus 7, that would be 10 times 8, or 80. If you multiply first, this would be 3 plus 56, which is 59. You get two very different answers. So it's key to make sure that we know which operation we perform first. And mathematicians many years ago decided on the following order of operations. First, you evaluate expressions that are inside grouping symbols like parentheses and brackets and braces and such. So whatever's inside, it's kind of like highlighting it. That's what you do first. If you see those parentheses, look inside to see what you're going to do first. Second, we evaluate power. So look for exponents. See if there's any exponents in the expression that you're going to be evaluating. And then third, multiply and divide from left to right. Now, I know I wrote the word multiply before I wrote the word divide. One of them had to be written first, but they're equally important. So you don't just do the multiplication and then do division. You do multiplication and division from left to right, whatever comes first. If it's division that's first, it leftmost in the expression, then you divide first. And the same thing with step number 4, adding and subtracting. You add and subtract from left to right. They're also equally important. So you don't always add before you subtract. It all is based on the order. What's leftmost and working your way across to the right. So I have some examples here in which we're going to evaluate the expressions. Notice in example A here, we do have grouping symbols. We have parentheses. So we're going to do the expression inside the parentheses, which is to subtract here. And that will give me 9 times. Now the 9 is right next to the parenthesis. No symbol between, so that implies multiplication. And 15 minus 4.2, or 4 2/10, would be 10.8. Now we're going to multiply 9 times 10.8. So I have to be careful here not to mess up with my multiplication. I haven't done a decimal in a while. So that's a 2 carry a 7, that's a 7, and that's a 9 with 1 decimal spot, so I get 97.2. Now in the second one, I don't have any symbols of grouping, but I have a fraction bar, which of course implies division. But because there's an expression in the numerator and there's an expression in the denominator, the fraction bar kind of separates it into 3 separate problems. I'm going to simplify the numerator, I'm going to simplify the denominator, and then I'm going to divide. So in the numerator, I'm adding here, that's 40. In the denominator, I'm subtracting, that's 5. And this means 40 divided by 5, or 8. Now in the next one, I have an exponent mixed in. I have a 3 to the second power on the end, that power. And so now I'm going to look, there are no symbols of grouping, but I'm going to do this part first. Now it's not negative 3 to the second power, it's minus 3 to the second power, 3 squared. So I'm doing the 3 to the second power first. That's 90 divided by 5 minus 9. Then I'm going to go to division before I do subtraction. 90 divided by 5 is 18, and then I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get an answer of 9. Now my last problem has symbols of grouping. It has parentheses and it has brackets. The brackets are the squared off looking ones there. The parentheses are the round ones. So I'm going to do the stuff inside the symbols of grouping, but since I have grouping symbols inside grouping symbols, I start with the innermost and work my way out. So the first thing I'm going to do is this part right here to the problem. So this is going to give me 4. Now the 4 is right next to the bracket, so that still implies multiplication. 32 minus, and I'll add here, 15 and 8 is 23. Now I'm going to do this part next to get rid of that next group of symbols of grouping, the brackets. I'm going to subtract 32 minus 23, and that is 9. Remember, the number 4 right next to the bracket implies multiplication, and then I can finish this off. And I get 36. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to evaluating expressions, which we've done in the first couple of sections already. Evaluate, remember, means to find the value. We're going to substitute the numbers into these variable expressions, and then we're going to apply our order of operations. So for the first problem, I'm going to substitute the 3 in for the x and the 4 in for the y. I get 5 times the quantity 3 plus 4. My order of operations says do the stuff inside the parentheses first. 5 times when it's right next to the parenthesis, and this of course is 7, and I have 35 as my answer. In the next one, I have a fraction, which of course the fraction bar implies division, so I'll substitute the 4 in for the y, the 3 in for the x. I have 4 all over 3 minus 1. And as the example previous in the lesson, I have a division. I'm going to simplify the numerator. It's simplified. I'm going to simplify the denominator. So that's 4 divided by 2. Of course, that means 2. I'll finish it off by dividing. Now, I have a couple of exponents in this expression here. I'm going to substitute the 4 in for the y. That's 4 to the second power. The 3 in for the x. That's 3 to the second power. I'm going to do the exponent here. That's 16. I'm going to do the exponent here. 3 squared, 3 times 3. That's 9. And then I'll finish it off and subtract. Now, the last one's the best one because it's got a little bit of everything in there. I'll substitute the 3 in for the x, the 4 in for the y. 3 plus 4 quantity squared. Now, I'm going to do the stuff inside the parentheses first. 3 plus 4 is 7. So this is 2 times 7 squared. I'm going to do the exponent next. So this is 2 times 49. 7 times 7 is 49. And then I multiply and I have 98. So remember, order of operations, you do the stuff inside the symbols of grouping, then you do the powers, then you do the multiplication, division from left to right, the addition, subtraction from left to right. Sometimes you'll see PEMDAS. Parentheses, exponents, multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting, if that helps to remind you of the order. Now I'm going to make a quick mention of some story problems that are coming up in this chapter and in the next chapter and in the next chapter. And we need an approach, a plan. And so to solve certain types of story problems, this is going to work probably pretty well for you. Or there are slight deviations of it, but for the most part, we read the problem carefully. We write a verbal model. That's where we translate words into symbols. We've done that before. We solve, we answer, making sure proper units, and then we check to make sure that the problem kind of makes sense, that the answer kind of makes sense to the problem, I should say. So in the example that I have, Tim bought 5 notebooks for $2.99 and 4 binders for $4.29 each. Find Tim's total cost for his school supplies. So his total cost would be, well, you have 5 notebooks at $2.99, so that's 5 times $2.99. And you have 4 binders at $4.29 each, so that's 4 times $4.29. And of course, we're going to take this amount, and we're going to add those together, and that is going to give us the cost of all these school supplies. Well, if I multiply 5 times $2.99 or 2.99, if I'm not mistaken, I get 14.95. And if I multiply 4 times 4.29 here, if I'm not mistaken, I get $17.16. Now notice here I am multiplying before I add. Now I'm going to add those together, and I get 32, if I'm not mistaken, 0.11. So I'm going to answer the problem. Now I've solved it. I'm going to answer the problem. Tim's cost is, and I'm going to put the dollar sign down, 32.11 or $32.11. Of course, that doesn't include tax, but that answers the problem, and that makes sense. You're looking at items that cost about $3 and $4. He's buying 5 of these and 4 of those. 5 $3 items, that's 15 bucks. 4 $4 items, that's 16 bucks. 15 and 16, we're in the ballpark there. That seems like a logical answer. Of course, you can double check your arithmetic. All right, now with these problems, just like all the other problems, make sure that you have your notes. Again, I don't want to remind you each time in each video, but make sure that you take notes. If you didn't take notes on this section, because I didn't remind you at the beginning of the video, go back, take notes, especially your order of operations and your examples, so you have something to look off of when you work your assignment. And remember, as always, practice, practice, practice.